The engine roared, but my heart screamed louder. I was 25, stuck in a beat-up sedan, and failing my third driving lesson in a row because my nerves were a tangled mess. Then Ethan, my instructor, reached over, his hand steadying mine on the gear shift, and whispered, "You got this." Dean, just feel the control. San Diego's sun beat down on the empty parking lot where we practiced that spring afternoon in 2025. Dean Harper, was a walking disaster behind the wheel. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I never needed to drive. Buses and bikes got me everywhere. But now, chasing a graphic design job in California, a license was non-negotiable. My palms sweated as I gripped the steering wheel, the car jerking with every clumsy shift. Ethan Caldwell, 27, sat beside me, his calm hazel eyes scanning my every move. He was the kind of guy who turned heads, sharp jawline, easy confidence, and a voice that could soothe a storm. I, on the other hand, was a lanky mess with messy dark hair and zero chill. "Dean, breathe," Ethan said, his tone gentle but firm. "You're overthinking it. Driving's like art. You feel the flow, not force it." I want to laugh. Art. I understood. My sketches were my escape, my way of making sense of a world that often felt too loud. But driving? It was chaos. Still, something about Ethan's patience made me want to try harder, not just to pass the test, but to prove something to him. Maybe to myself. He leaned closer, his cologne, a mix of cedar and citrus, hitting me like a wave. "Let's try parallel parking again," he said, pointing to a row of cones. My stomach nodded. Parallel parking was my nemesis. Last week, I knocked over 3 cones and nearly cried. Ethan, though, never lost his cool. He just grinned, reset the cones, and said, "We'll get there." His belief in me was unnerving. No one had ever looked at me like I was capable of anything. As I lined up the car, my hand shook. The cones loomed like judges in an execution line. "You're too far left," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Ease it back." I turned the wheel too sharply, and the car lurched. "Shit," I muttered, slamming the brake. My face burned. Ethan didn't flinch. Instead, he reached over, his hand covering mine on the gear shift. His touch was warm, deliberate, and sent a jolt through me I wasn't ready for. "Dean, look at me," he said. I did, reluctantly. His eyes locked onto mine, steady and kind. "You're not failing. You're learning. Now, shift to reverse, and I'll guide you." His hand stayed on mine, guiding it to the gear. My pulse raced, not just from the lesson, but from the way his fingers lingered, firm yet gentle. "Feel the car," he said. "It's an extension of you." I nodded, too flustered to speak, and followed his lead. For the first time, the car slid smoothly into the space. No cones harmed. "See, you're a natural," Ethan said, his smile wide. I laughed, a shaky, relieved sound. "Natural's a stretch," I said, but my chest felt lighter. His hand was still on mine, and neither of us moved to break the contact. The air in the car shifted, heavy with something unspoken. I glanced at him, expecting a quick retreat, but his gaze held mine, searching, curious. For a moment, the world outside the car, San Diego's hum, my looming test, My chaotic life faded. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's touch replayed in my mind, a loop I couldn't pause. I'd never been open about my sexuality. Not in Ohio, where being gay felt like a secret I had to bury. California was different, freer, brighter, but I was still figuring out who I was here. Ethan, though, seemed so sure of himself, like he cracked some code to life I hadn't even glimpsed. Was he just being kind, or was there something more in that touch? I stared at my sketchbook, pencil hovering, but all I could draw were the lines of his jaw, the curve of his smile. The next lesson, Ethan was different, still professional, but there was a warmth in his voice, a spark in his glances. We practiced highway driving, the Pacific Coast Highway stretching before us, waves crashing below. "You're doing great," he said as I merged into traffic, my knuckles white but steady. "Told you. It's about flow." I stole a glance at him, his profile sharp against the ocean backdrop. "You make it sound easy," I said. He chuckled. "It's not. But you make it look good." My heart stuttered. Was he flirting? I wanted to ask, but fear clamped my mouth shut. Instead, I focused on the road, on the rhythm of the car, on the man beside me who was starting to feel less like an instructor and more like a question I desperately wanted to answer. Weeks passed, and every lesson with Ethan felt like stepping onto a tightrope, thrilling, terrifying, and impossible to look away from. San Diego's streets became my canvas. Each turn and merge a stroke I was learning to master, guided by Ethan's steady voice. But it wasn't just driving I was learning. It was him, his quiet humor, his stories of surfing at dawn, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. One afternoon, as we practiced three-point turns in a quiet neighborhood, Ethan asked, "So, Dean, what's your deal? Why the move to California?" His tone was casual, but his gaze was intent, like he actually cared. I hesitated. Opening up wasn't my thing, small-town habits died hard, but something about Ethan made me want to try. "Needed a change," I said, eyes on the road. Ohio felt like a cage. I'm a graphic designer, or at least I'm trying to be. Thought San Diego might give me a shot at something real. I didn't mention the other cage, the one where I'd hidden my true self, afraid of what my family, my town, would think. Ethan nodded, like he heard the words I didn't say. "Takes guts to start over," he said. I respect that. I glanced at him, my chest tight. "What about you? Why teach driving? You seem like you could do anything." He laughed. A low, warm sound. Long story. Short version, I like helping people find their way. Plus, I get to meet guys like you. My breath caught. Guys like me. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the lesson ended, and he was back to professional mode, leaving me spinning. That night, I sketched him again, Ethan leaning against the car, sunset behind him, his smile a secret I couldn't decode. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Great progress today. Dean, you're going to ace that test." I stared at the words, heart pounding. It was just a text, but it felt like a lifeline. Our next lesson was on a Saturday, a coastal drive to La Jolla. The cliffs rose sharp against the sky, waves crashing below, and the car hummed under my hands. Ethan was quieter than usual, his usual banter replaced by a thoughtful silence. "Everything okay?" I asked, merging onto the highway. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, just life stuff." You ever feel like you're running from something, even when you're standing still? I swallowed hard. All the time. It was the most honest thing I'd said in years. He looked at me, really looked, and for a moment, I thought he might say something big. Instead, he pointed to the road. Focus. Dean. You're drifting. But his hand brushed mine on the wheel. A fleeting touch that felt like a promise. Later, parked at a scenic overlook, he broke the silence. Dean, can I ask you something personal? My heart raced. Sure, I said, voice barely steady. He hesitated, then asked, you ever feel like you're hiding a part of yourself? Like the real you? The question hit like a punch. I nodded, unable to speak. He looked out at the ocean, his voice low. Me too. Took me years to admit I'm gay. Even now, it's not always easy. The air left my lungs. He'd said it casual, but raw, like a weight he'd carried too long. I wanted to tell him I was too, that I'd known since I was 15, but never dared say it out loud. Instead, I mumbled, that's brave. He smiled, soft and sad. Not really. Brave would be living it fully. Not just teaching guys like you how to drive and hoping they see me. My pulse thundered. Was he saying what I thought? Before I could respond, he changed the subject, pointing out a turn I'd missed. But the moment lingered, a crack in the wall I'd built around myself. That night, I lay awake, sketching his face, wondering if I had the courage to step into the truth he'd laid bare. The driving test was a week away, and my nerves were a live wire. Ethan's confession had flipped my world upside down, but we hadn't talked about it since. Our lessons stayed professional, yet every glance, every accidental brush of his hand, felt charged. I was falling for him, hard, and it scared the hell out of me. One evening, we practiced night driving, San Diego's city lights glittering like a promise. Ethan was in a good mood, teasing me about my artist hands gripping the wheel too tight. Loosen up, Dean, he said, grinning. You're not sketching a masterpiece here. I laughed, but my heart wasn't in it. I wanted to tell him everything. How I'd known I was gay since high school. How moving to California was as much about escaping judgment as chasing a career. But fear kept me quiet. As we pulled into a quiet lot to practice parking, Ethan turned to me. You're ready for the test. You know. You got the skills. It's just about trusting yourself. His words felt like they meant more than driving. I nodded, staring at the dashboard. What if I'm not ready for other stuff? I said, voice barely above a whisper. He tilted his head, eyes soft. Like what? I took a shaky breath. Like being honest. About who I am. My hands trembled on the wheel. Ethan's expression shifted. Serious, but warm. Dean, you don't have to have it all figured out. But hiding? It eats you alive. Trust me. He paused, then added, whoever you are, I'd like to know that guy. My throat tightened. I wanted to spill everything, but the words stuck. Instead, I shifted gears, literally and figuratively, and drove us back to the driving school. Ethan didn't push, but his silence felt like an invitation, one I wasn't sure I could accept. The next day, I got a call from my mom. Dean, when are you coming home? She asked, her voice laced with worry. Home. The word felt like a trap. I'd left Ohio to escape the suffocating expectations. The whispers about that Harper boy who never dated. who spent too much time sketching alone. Not sure. Mom, I said, dodging. I'm still figuring things out, she sighed, and I could hear the questions she didn't ask. That night, I met Ethan for an unscheduled lesson. He'd texted, offering extra practice before the test. And I jumped at the chance, not for driving, but for him. We drove to a quiet beach lot, the moon casting silver over the waves. You're distracted, Ethan said, eyeing me as I fumbled a turn. Want to talk about it? I parked, hands still on the wheel. My family, they don't know I'm gay, I blurted. The words felt like glass, sharp and fragile. Ethan's face softened. That's heavy, he said. Have you thought about telling them? I shook my head. They'd never get it. Small-town Ohio isn't exactly Pride Central. He nodded, like he understood more than I'd said. I told my dad when I was 20, he said. Thought he'd disown me. He didn't, but it wasn't easy. Still, it's better than carrying the secret. I looked at him, his face half lit by moonlight, and felt a surge of courage. Ethan, I like you, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. My face burned, but I kept going. Like, a lot. And it's freaking me out because I've never done this before. His eyes widened, then softened into a smile that made my chest ache. Dean, he said, his voice low. I've been hoping you'd say that. He reached for my hand, his touch steady, grounding. For the first time, I didn't pull away. We sat there, hands clasped, the ocean whispering outside, and I felt like I was finally driving in the right direction. Holding Ethan's hand in that moonlit car felt like crossing a line I'd never dared approach. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the thrill of being seen, really seen for the first time. But with that thrill came a new kind of terror. What now? The next morning, I woke to a text from Ethan, last lesson before the test. You ready? I wasn't sure if he meant driving or us, but I replied, ready as I'll ever be. We met at the driving school, and the air between us was different, charged, like the moment before a storm. He kept it professional, guiding me through mock test scenarios, but his smiles were softer, his touches lingering. When I nailed a tricky merge, he high-fived me, his hand warm against mine. You're killing it, Dean, he said, and I wanted to believe he meant more than my driving. After the lesson, he suggested grabbing coffee at a nearby diner, a first beyond the car. Over steaming mugs, he opened up about his life, growing up in San Diego, coming out to his family, the ex who'd broken his heart 2 years ago. I thought I'd never let anyone in again, he said, stirring his coffee. Then you showed up, all nerves and talent. And well, you're hard to ignore. My face flushed. I'm just a guy failing at driving, I said, trying to play it cool. He laughed. You're more than that. You just don't see it yet. That night, I called my best friend, Mia, back in Ohio. She'd always been my confidant, the one person who suspected I was gay but never pushed. I met someone, I told her, voice shaking. His name's Ethan, she squealed, bombarding me with questions. And for once, I didn't hold back. Talking about him felt like letting out a breath I'd held for years. Dean, you sound happy, she said. Don't let fear screw this up. Her words stuck with me, a challenge I wasn't sure I could meet. The day of the test arrived, a sunny Tuesday that felt like Judgment Day. Ethan drove me to the DMV, his presence calming my nerves. You've got this, he said, squeezing my shoulder. Just drive like you do with me. The test was a blur, parallel parking, lane changes, a stern examiner scribbling notes. When she handed me the pass slip, I nearly cried. I ran outside, where Ethan waited, and hugged him without thinking. I did it, I said, laughing. His arms tightened around me, and for a moment, the world was just us. But reality crashed in fast. That evening, my dad called. Dean, your mom's worried. You're different out there. What's going on? His tone was sharp, suspicious. I froze, Ethan's face flashing in my mind. Just boozy, elite, hating myself for it. After hanging up, I stared at my sketchbook, where Ethan's face filled every page. I wanted to be brave, like he was, but the thought of telling my family, of losing them, felt like a cliff I couldn't jump off. Ethan noticed my mood at our next meetup, a walk along Mission Beach. You okay? He asked, his hand brushing mine as we walked. I wanted to grab it, to anchor myself, but I didn't. Family stuff, I said. They don't know about me. Were you? He nodded, his face unreadable. It's your pace, Dean. But you can't run from it forever. His words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. As we stood by the water, the sunset painting his face gold, I realized I didn't just want to pass a test. I wanted to live a life where I could hold his hand without fear. Passing the test should have felt like freedom, but it only tightened the knot in my chest. Ethan and I were growing closer, coffee dates turned into long walks. His hand finding mine in quiet moments, but the shadow of my family loomed. Every call from Ohio felt like a countdown to a truth I wasn't ready to face. One evening, Ethan invited me to his place, a small apartment overlooking the bay. It was our first time outside the car or public spaces, and my nerves were electric. His place was cozy, filled with surfboards and photos of him with friends, a life lived openly. You hungry? He asked, tossing me a beer. We cooked pasta together, laughing as I fumbled with a knife. When he slid behind me to show me how to chop, his chest against my back, I forgot how to breathe. You're hopeless, he teased, but his hands lingered on my shoulders, warm and sure. After dinner, we sat on his couch, the city lights twinkling outside. Dean, he said, his voice serious. Where's this going? You and me. My heart raced. I wanted to say everything, how he made me feel alive, how I dreamed of a future with him, but fear choked me. I don't know, I admitted. I want this, but my family. I'm not like you. I'm not out. His face fell, just for a second, but cut me. I get it, he said. But I can't be your secret forever. His words haunted me. The next day, I landed a freelance design gig, a small win that felt hollow without him to share it with. I texted him, asking to meet at our usual cliffside spot. When he arrived, his usual confidence was tempered with something new, vulnerability. I like you, Dean, he said, leaning against the car. More than I should. But I need to know you're in this. Not half in. I swallowed hard. I'm trying, I said. It's just hard. He nodded, but his eyes were distant. I know. But I've been someone's secret before. It broke me. That night, I called Mia again, spilling everything. He deserves better than me hiding, I said, tears stinging. Then don't hide, she said. You're not just Dean from Ohio anymore. You're Dean, who's brave enough to love someone. Her words lit a fire in me, small but growing. I started sketching again, not just Ethan's face, but us, holding hands, laughing, free. The next week, I invited Ethan to a local art show where one of my designs was featured. He showed up in a fitted blazer, looking like he'd stepped out of a dream. Proud of you, he said, studying my work. As we walked through the gallery, our hands brushed, and this time, I didn't pull away. I grabbed his hand, my heart pounding but sure. He looked at me, surprised, then smiled a real, unguarded smile. You sure? He whispered. I nodded. I'm sure, but the high didn't last. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from my dad. Dean, we're coming to visit. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. They were coming to San Diego, and I had no idea how to tell them about Ethan or myself. As I stood there, Ethan's hand still in mine, I knew the road ahead was about to get a lot harder. My parents' visit loomed like a storm cloud. I hadn't seen them in a year, and now they were flying to San Diego, expecting the son they thought they knew. Ethan sensed my panic but didn't push. I'm here. Dean, he said, squeezing my hand during a quiet moment at the beach. Whatever you decide. His support was a lifeline, but it also made the weight of my choice heavier. The night before they arrived, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, sketching Ethan's face, his eyes, his smile, the way he made me feel like I could be more. I realized I didn't just want to be with him. I wanted to be the man he saw in me. By dawn, I'd made a decision. I texted Mia, I'm telling them. Tomorrow. Her reply was instant. You've got this. Love you. My parents arrived at noon, their familiar faces a mix of joy and worry as they hugged me at the airport. Over lunch, they asked about my job, my life, but their questions felt like a prelude to something bigger. Finally, my dad set down his fork. Dean, you're different. Distant. What's going on? My mom's eyes searched mine, and I knew it was now or never. Taking a deep breath, I said, I'm gay. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. Silence followed, heavy and sharp. My mom's face crumpled, not with anger, but confusion. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, voice trembling. My dad just stared, his jaw tight. I pushed on, heart racing. I was scared. But I've met someone, Ethan. He's important to me. I showed them a photo of us at the art show, our hands clasped, smiling. My mom's eyes softened, but my dad stood and walked out. The rest of their visit was strained. My mom tried to understand, asking cautious questions, but my dad barely spoke. When they left, I felt hollow, like I'd lost something I might never get back. Ethan was there, though, waiting in my apartment with takeout and a quiet strength. You were brave, he said, pulling me close. No matter what happens, you did that. I buried my face in his shoulder, tears falling. But for the first time, I felt free. Months later, I got a letter from my mom. We're trying. Dean, she wrote. Your dad's struggling, but he loves you. We both do. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Ethan and I grew stronger. Our relationship no longer a secret, but a life we were building, drives along the coast. Late night talks, sketches of our future. My design started gaining traction, and Ethan took up teaching art classes alongside driving, his passion for helping others shining through. One evening, we parked at our cliffside spot, the same place where he'd first held my hand. "You changed my life, Dean," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was stuck, just going through the motions. "You made me want more," I smiled, my hand finding his. "You taught me control," I said. "Not just driving, but living." We kissed, the sunset wrapping us in gold. And I knew this was the lesson that mattered most. Love, honest and unafraid, was worth every risk.